The cypress whispers. It started when my truck threw a belt 2 miles into the swamp trail, right as the sky began turning that thick, sticky orange that signals dusk in the Louisiana backwoods. And I cursed and kicked the tire, more out of habit than hope, because I knew no one was coming out this far on a Thursday evening, not when the locals avoid this place even during the day. Not when they spit before speaking its name, Belle Marais, the beautiful swamp, which is a damn lie, because nothing about it is beautiful, not the way the trees lean too close to the water, or the way the vines hang like old ropes from the branches, or the way the water never reflects the sky, always murky, always still like glass over something dead. And I grabbed my gear and decided to hoof it to the old ranger station a few miles ahead, thinking maybe it still had a landline or at least a dry place to wait. And the path was narrow and overgrown, the kind of trail you only find when you already know it's there. And I hadn't walked more than 10 minutes before the mosquitoes started, not the usual annoying buzz, but a thick cloud that followed me like a cloak, stinging and whining and never satisfied. And as I slapped them away, I realized the forest had gone quiet. No frogs, no birds, no splash of fish or croak of toads. Just the hum of insects and the occasional distant slosh, like something dragging through the water on the far side of the trees, and I thought it might be a gator. But the sound wasn't right, too slow, too deliberate, and I kept moving, sweat soaking my back, mouth dry. And that's when I noticed the carvings on the trees, small at first, just shallow crosses or X's gouged into the bark. But then they grew stranger, spirals, runes, sigils I couldn't place. And each tree seemed older than the last, like I was walking backward in time, the moss thicker, the roots knotted like arthritic hands clutching the path, and I should have turned back. I know that now. But the swamp has a way of folding around you, of making the path behind you vanish as surely as the one ahead, and I pushed forward until the ranger station came into view. Or what was left of it, sagging on its stilts, like a drunk too tired to stand, roof half collapsed, windows long gone, and yet the door creaked open as I approached, like it had been waiting, and I stepped inside and was immediately hit with the smell of rot and mildew, thick and wet like something had died in the walls, and the room was bare except for an old desk, a rusted lantern, and a single wooden chair turned away from me, and I felt my chest tighten, every hair on my arms rising, because the chair was rocking, slow and steady, as if someone had just gotten up, or worse was still sitting there unseen. And I backed away, breath caught in my throat, and the moment my boot hit the porch, I heard it whispers, low and curling like smoke from the trees. Impossible to make out, but they weren't in my head, they came from everywhere, from the water, the branches, the very wood beneath my feet, and I turned and ran. Not toward my truck but deeper into the swamp, because that's what the fear made me do. That primal panic that says don't go back, don't look back, and I ran until I found the cemetery, if you can call it that. Just a ring of stone markers half sunk in mud, names long erased by time, but at the center was a tree. Tall and twisted and black as pitch, and hanging from its limbs were dozens of dolls, some cloth, some porcelain, some just bundles of straw tied with red thread, and the whispers grew louder, not words exactly but emotions, grief, rage, hunger. And I turned to leave but found myself frozen, because standing at the edge of the ring was a woman, barefoot, pale, dress torn and soaked to the knees, hair covering her face, and she pointed at me with a hand that bent the wrong way, every finger twisted backward like broken twigs. And I fell to my knees, vision swimming, because in that moment I saw something behind her, something tall and draped in moss, face hidden behind a tangle of vines, arms too long, hanging like ropes at its sides. And it didn't move, just watched, and I swear the swamp held its breath, and I blinked and they were gone. The woman, the thing, even the dolls, vanished like smoke. And I ran again, not caring where, and when I finally stumbled out onto gravel, it was pitch black and my truck was nowhere in sight, just trees and dark, endless dark, and then I heard it again, that dragging sound, slow and wet, and I turned, and there it was, standing just at the edge of the tree line, moss still dripping from its limbs, and it spoke not with a voice but in my head. A single word, over and over, stay, 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 and I don't remember how I got away, only that I woke up in a fishing boat the next morning, half submerged in reeds, clothes soaked and torn, and when I got to town, they said I'd been missing for 2 nights, and no one believed me when I told them what I saw. They just looked at each other and muttered Belle Marais, and one old woman took my hand and said, "She chooses who she keeps." And I left that town and never went back. But sometimes, when I'm near water, I hear those whispers again. And once, just once, I woke to find moss on my floorboards, still damp, and the faint sound of a rocking chair creaking in the dark. Beneath the snow line, the snow began falling sometime after I crossed the last hunter's marker. Thick flakes piling on my shoulders and hat, dulling the sound of the wind and the trees. And I remember feeling that kind of silence that presses down on your chest like a heavy coat. Even though it should be peaceful, it wasn't. It was the kind of silence that made me wonder if I was the last person left on Earth. Or maybe just the last person in these woods, and I trudged forward, thinking I'd turn around at the next ridge, but the next ridge never came, just more trees, more snow, and that strange sensation that I wasn't alone out there. That there was something or someone just behind me. Never quite close enough to see, but close enough that I could hear a second pair of footsteps syncopating with mine and stopping exactly when I stopped. And the first time I turned around, there was only white and black and gray, a winter postcard of stillness. So I chalked it up to my imagination and pushed on, but it kept happening, that sound. Sometimes crunching a beat behind me, sometimes ahead, and once, very clearly, directly beside me, though when I whipped my head to the right, I nearly lost my balance in the snowdrift. But there was nothing there, of course. Just the whipping snow and the low hunch of pine boughs under ice, and I told myself I was tired. I hadn't eaten since morning, and the body plays tricks when it's depleted. When it's cold, when it's scared. But I wasn't scared, not yet, not really, not until I saw the second set of prints, deep, fresh, walking parallel to mine and matching my stride like a shadow. And they weren't boot prints, they weren't human, they were elongated, too narrow. And the toes, I swear, the toes were clawed, almost like a bird's but sunk deep into the snow. Deeper than mine, like something heavier than me had walked right beside me for miles. And I hadn't noticed. And then I realized I hadn't seen any wildlife for hours. Not a squirrel, not a bird, not even scat or tracks, like the forest had been emptied out, and I felt a twinge in the center of my spine. The way a dog might feel its hackles rise, and I tried to laugh, but the sound came out too dry. Too sharp, and I turned around again, slow this time. But still found nothing but those prints. Trailing off into the trees like whatever had walked with me had simply peeled off at some point and vanished into the white. And I tried to follow them with my eyes, but they blurred, just a bit, like the focus of the world itself was failing out here. And I knew I needed to turn back, needed to find the trail markers again, but when I turned back the way I'd come, I couldn't find my own prints anymore. They'd been filled in, covered over by the still falling snow, or maybe something else, and that's when the panic set in. Quiet at first, like a whisper behind my ribs, and I started to move faster, not running but walking with more urgency. As if forward motion alone would protect me, like if I just kept going, I'd come out somewhere. Anywhere, a logging road, a ranger hut, even another person, hell, I'd settle for a bear, anything real, anything living, but the forest was dead quiet, even my breath felt muffled. Like I was under a glass dome, and then the sun began to drop. So fast I didn't notice until the light went violet and the trees stretched long shadows over the snow, and I thought, if I don't make shelter, I'll freeze. But I didn't have a tent or even a tarp, just a small pack, a knife, a headlamp, and a lighter. And my hands were shaking, not from cold but from the sense that something was very wrong. Like I wasn't where I thought I was anymore, like I had slipped into a place that looked like home but wasn't, and I stumbled into a shallow clearing ringed with pines. And in the center was what I thought at first was a boulder. But it was too smooth, and when I got closer, I saw it was the wreck of an old camper van, stripped bare, windows punched out, door hanging like a mouth. And something about it made me stop cold, because it was quiet inside the wreck. Dead quiet, not even the wind passed through it, and the tracks the clawed ones led right to it, stopped at the door, then disappeared, and my blood went ice cold, and I backed away slowly, turning my headlamp on, though the dying daylight still clung to the trees, and I scanned the forest, and that's when I saw it not clearly. Not at first but a figure, just barely distinguishable from the trunks, too tall, too narrow, standing perfectly still, not 10 yards from me, and when I aimed the headlamp at it, it was gone, just vanished. No rustle, no movement, but the tracks returned, circling the camper now, fresh ones, not filled in, and I ran. I don't remember picking a direction. Just bolted into the trees, branches slapping my face, snow clawing at my legs. and I ran until my lungs burned, and my thighs cramped, and I fell into a hollow between two rocks, breathing steam and praying I hadn't let it to me. Whatever it was, if it was even real, and I must have passed out because the next thing I remember, it was darker, and the woods were still, and there was a sound, a humming, low and bone-deep, like something buried was stirring, and when I looked over the ridge, I saw lights moving through the forest, pale and flickering, not flashlights but orbs, like old gas lamps, and between them, I saw shapes, tall and thin, moving not quite human, gliding like paper on water, and they passed not 20 feet from me, never looking, never stopping. And I buried my face in the snow, and bit my knuckle to stay silent, and when I looked up again, they were gone. And the woods were black, and I stayed like that until morning, and when I finally stood up and crested the next hill, I saw the trailhead, not 50 feet from me. The same one I'd entered through yesterday, except I swear, the signs were different, older, faded, rusted, and when I checked my phone, it was dead, not just dead drained, like it had been off for days. And when I finally reached my car, I found it covered in a thick sheet of frost, inside and out. Like it had been sitting there for weeks, and I drove, not even caring where, just drove until I found a gas station. And the attendant looked at me like I was a ghost and said I looked like I'd seen one. And I told him I'd been camping for one night, just one, and he blinked and said, "Buddy, it's been 4 days." And I laughed, but it sounded like a sob. And I never went back to those woods, and I never will, because I don't know what found me there, or what I became to escape. Only that I don't feel quite the same anymore, like something stayed behind, or worse, like something came back with me. It waits between pines. I never believed the old man at the trailhead when he said not to hike alone past Eagle's Spine Ridge. Said the trees were too tall up there, the silence too heavy, like something lived in it that didn't like being watched, and he called it the thin thing, not because it was skinny, he said, but because it only came through when the barrier between things got thin, between dusk and night, between breath and silence, between being seen and not. And I laughed, thanked him for the warning, and headed up anyway, my pack full, my GPS ready. The air thinner and sharper the higher I climbed, pines stretching up like spears trying to skewer the gray sky, and by the time I made camp it was getting dark. Just a clearing by a frozen creek and a ring of trees so dense you'd have to duck to move between them, and I built a fire, drank some freeze-dried soup, and watched the flames flicker until I fell asleep to the crackle of branches overhead. But something woke me up just after midnight, no sound at first, just a weight, like the dark had thickened and was pressing down on the tent, and then I heard it, soft at first, like something brushing its fingers across the fabric, circling slowly, and I sat up, knife already in my hand, and then it stopped, all at once, and I waited. Breath locked in my chest, but nothing else came, and in the morning, there were no tracks, no broken twigs, just a strange, almost oily scent in the air, like burnt hair and cold metal, and I blamed the altitude, maybe a weird dream, and pressed on, climbing higher toward the ridge. And I started seeing things, not clearly, just shapes between the trees, always tall, always just far enough that I couldn't make out detail. And I'd stop, stare, and it'd be gone. But then I started hearing it, the breathing, heavy and wet, not mine, something big, just behind the slope or behind the trunk I'd passed, and it didn't echo right. It didn't sound like an animal, more like something that was mimicking breath, trying to learn it, and I shouted once, just to break the silence, but my voice sounded small, swallowed up by the trees, and when I finally made it to the ridge and looked down into the next valley, my phone buzzed once, then died, battery full moments ago, just gone, and I knew I should turn back, but something in me said to keep going, like I didn't want to be between it and the trailhead now, like something was hurting me forward, and by nightfall I'd found an old fire tower, half collapsed, stairs gone, but the bottom level was intact, and I crawled inside and bolted the door, and I barely slept, just listened to the wind. Except it wasn't wind, not always, sometimes it was whispering, too fast to understand, and sometimes I'd hear my name, not shouted, but spoken right next to me, like a breath in my ear, and when I finally passed out, I dreamed I was in the trees, looking down at myself, watching me twitch and mumble, and something behind me, something huge, standing still as a shadow, head bent just enough to almost touch mine, and I woke screaming, and the door was open, bolts snapped like twigs, snow blown inside but no tracks, and I ran, didn't pack, didn't eat, just ran down the slope until my legs burned and lungs screamed, and it followed, not close, but never far, always behind the next bend. And I heard it speak once, not with words but sound. Like a mouth that had never spoken before trying to stretch open, and it said my name again, but too many syllables, too slow. Like it liked the way it felt in its throat, and I hid under a fallen log for hours while it moved above me. Slow, dragging something, maybe a branch, maybe a body, I couldn't tell. And when I made it back to where my tent had been, it was gone, the fire pit cold, but my pack was still there, unzipped, open, and something had nested in it, left bits of hair and teeth, not human teeth, not quite animal either, and I ran again, downhill now, but the trees closed in tighter, trail gone, compass spinning, and I started to think maybe I'd never left the ridge. Maybe it just made me think I had, and I could feel it behind me now, not chasing, just watching, letting the fear ripen. And I saw a clearing ahead and ran toward it but stopped cold because in the snow, standing in a circle of stones, were dozens of figures. Not people, not alive, just skin, stretched over frames like scarecrows, hollow eyes, no mouths, and each wore a hiker's backpack. Some modern, some ancient, moldy, and one of them, God help me, one of them was mine. And I turned to run and saw it again, tall limbs, too long, joints bending the wrong way, skin like bark and smoke, no eyes but I felt it seeing me, seeing inside me, and I heard it speak without sound. You are not the first, and I screamed and felt the snow crack beneath me and I fell through into black water, freezing and choking, and it waited above, watching, not moving. Because it knew the cold would finish what it started, and I blacked out, and when I woke, I was in a hospital in Durango. A ranger found me 3 days later, wandering barefoot, down a fire road, clothes frozen to my skin. And they said I was lucky to be alive, but I don't feel lucky, I feel watched, still, even now, because sometimes I wake up and find pine needles in my bed, or footprints on my floor that stop at the foot of the bed and don't turn back. And sometimes I hear my name whispered from the shadows between the closet and the wall. And I know, that thing let me go, not because it couldn't keep me, but because it wanted me to remember.